Okay, so thank you very much, Martina, and the rest of the team for making this possible, first of all. So thank you very, very much. We can't imagine how many hours of work you put it into here, and, well, how stressful the last days or hours must have been. So I don't even want to mention. So thank you very much, Martina, and the rest of the people who was involved in the organization. Thank you very much. I hope you can read it properly. I'm gonna hand out later just the resume, basically the same things you're gonna see on the slides. You're gonna have it here on paper, so if you don't have to write everything. If you don't, I hope the. Can you make it full screen? Maybe is it possible that you somehow that? I don't know if it's. But it's not so important.
It's in PDF.
So if you can see properly, I can hand it out already so you can read it easier on paper if you want. Well, don't care. It's nice. Lesemodus? Well, this. Don't worry. Okay. Next slide. Well, here you can see just quickly. This is the logo of our school in Tenerife. But today we're here on behalf of EUDEC. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to introduce myself quickly. My name is Gabriel Groiss. I was trained in Germany as an educator. I'm working in education since 2007, mainly in nature education. But since 2016, we founded in Tenerife, after moving to Tenerife, the Playa Escuela, which is a free democratic school in nature for 6 years now. And I'm a council member of EUDEC, which is the European Community of Democratic Education. I'm the coordinator of external communication and lobbying circle. So this is my role here today. So just a short, we're parents of 11 and 9-year-old boy and girl, so this is the most important capacitation. Okay, so for me, I think we really want to take the best out of here. This is a big opportunity, it's a big responsibility, and to me, it's really important to point out that we are aware that there's a certain tendency or danger, maybe we could see in different pedagogical traditions, like for example Montessori, where the original philosophy, the original ideas were like diluted, is this right said? Like mixed up and like stayed on a superficial level. So for me it's really important to go deep into the details because they are very important. And I've seen it in nature education, like the forest kindergartens, I guess you know. They become a trend, which is great that they get popular and they become like very attractive to people. But it's also a danger because sometimes it becomes, popular, but we keep like we stay in a certain surface. For example, when talking about nature education, what we see a little bit, the tendency is to take conventional schooling into nature and like create a teaching or classroom approach, taking it to nature and not taking the chance what nature is offering us really. So I really want to use these presentations to go into the main thoughts I have myself. I hope I represent these ideas more or less good. But first of all, we want to change something, and if we want to change something, I think it's important to contrast why we want to change something. If everything would be perfect, we would have no need to meet here and do something to work for a change. So I think we have to be aware also of what is going wrong in this world and what we need to learn. What is the change we need to learn? What is going wrong and what is the change we need? And this in a wider perspective, in a bigger picture, because nowadays, I mean, we already know it since the 70s, the Club of Rome, the limits of growth, or I don't know the English name. So since the 70s, we know that the resources are limited, and lately scientists are talking more and more about doomsday is coming closer. So I think it's arrived a few years ago already that it's really urgent. Nobody wants to be dramatic, nobody wants to be alarming, but I think we have to be very conscious that a collapse on several levels, ecological, social, resources, so is coming closer, and I mean it's easy to ignore it, but I think we have to be very aware that it's, how they say, not 5 to 12, maybe we're already over 12. So I think it's important to be aware that it's really urgent to take changes. So, to think in the bigger picture, what kind of society do we need? And to be aware that education is always political. And that we have to be aware that this is not just about educating our children, that they raise well and they take their opportunities to develop their potential, that there is always a political dimension, a sociological dimension. That this is not about just to develop the creative or the productive capacities of the children, that there is a social political dimension in our educational activity. Okay? So what is going wrong? And I think after years of thinking about what is the core aspects of what we do in our school and what is also going wrong in society, and I had a chat about this recently with a psychologist, and she said it in the exactly same words, is maybe one of the central aspects which is going wrong is the disconnection, and what we should try in our education is to preserve the connection on 3 levels, to ourselves, and to our inner world, and to our needs, and to our emotions, and to our rhythms, and to our also cognitive, and to logical thinking, coherence, and so on. So to myself, to feel myself. And at the other side, I think main thing which is going wrong in mainstream education, conventional education, is the disconnection from the children to themselves. They don't feel themselves, they don't know themselves, and so on. So I think, and we see this later on a psychological level, that the disconnection to ourselves is maybe one of the core problems. Okay? Also on the social level, the connection, the interaction, to be sensitive, to responsible for each other. So, and also with the world, with the cultural and the natural world. So the connection and the disconnection. So maybe the description of what is going wrong in this world is to describe that we are disconnected to ourselves, to the others, and to the world. And what we want to reach with our education, at least speaking for us, is maybe to preserve and cultivate this connection. Okay? So, and there, like, also to contrast, is it about reacting out of a passive consumption posture, or acting from a sensitive alternative thinking and responsibility? So what kind of children do we want to educate? That they respond, or they become autonomous, active, and creative themselves? So I think these are also 2 core aspects of education, and here talking about democratic education. And we can get really, I mean, I want to keep it short today. We can go really philosophical, because here we can really go deep, dive deep, and like I like this the sentence that we are caught between our tails and our brains. Or some people say that we're like caught in between being monkeys or wanting to be gods. Like, what is our potential? Are we just animals which are reacting to our environment to survive? Or are we conscious beings that really have a free will? And there's this beautiful sentence of Schopenhauer who says we are free to do what we want, but we are not free to want what we want. So what does condition our free will, and are we really free in our free will? And how do we condition our children to really develop a free will? So, and this is about being conscious or unconscious. So I really want to be very clear about this, because when we talk about schooling, when we talk about learning, it's always, or mainly we associate it to what do they learn, how do they adapt knowledge, how do they develop their potential, but many times on a very content level, or maybe skills level. But I think we have to be very aware that this is, maybe we can go to the next slide. Yeah, well, the next one is the, well, go to the next one. No, sorry, back. So this comes later. That already, it comes later again, but is it about learning or is it about development? Is it about content or is it about what we call soft skills? To be very clear about this, because when we talk about schooling, when we talk about learning, the focus many times goes on to learn things and not to develop as a person. And going back to the social, bigger picture is what we need. We need to be connected, we need to trust each other, we need to communicate each other, we need to live together. So this is, I think, the priority, and I hope that we have this in mind when we develop this project, that maybe our focus is not so much on what do they learn, and more on how do they develop as persons, how do they develop as community. Okay, so the objective, because I was taught in my training, when you do a pedagogical work, you always have to be conscious about the objective. What do you want to reach? So our general objective for us, I don't know if you share it, is to educate empowered, autonomous, sensitive, responsible, and creative people. And creativity not just in an artistic way. So they really create out of an autonomous thinking. Okay? And they know to act, of their own initiative and through democratic participation. Okay? So this maybe are the general objectives. I don't know if we go later deeper into this and discuss this, but this is my proposal. So here we have to ask again, what is going wrong, more precisely on conventional education, but also in progressive education, because there, of course, many people notice that we need change, and there has been, since Montessori, since Steiner, since many others, coming up different tendencies, and they are so-called progressive education, okay? And I want to go into the long-term psychological effects. It's not because many people complain about school on a very obvious way, but many things are not registered by many people. So for me, the core problems of conventional education, which is marked by vertical directive structures, and this happens also in progressive education, where the main protagonist is the adult which instructs the children. And this is still on respectful education, which is maybe not so hard, not so harsh, not punishing anymore, but is still the central protagonism is the adult directing the children. So this is also still happening in many or the most of the progressive educational concepts, to be aware of that. Okay? And what I mean here with expectation transmits insufficiency, this means when we approach from this vertical position, I teach you, I'm going to show you, I'm going to guide you, we transmit conscious or unconsciously to the children, the way you are not enough, because I expect you to learn more, to do more. So approaching all the time to them, do something more. So the way you are insufficient, and we transmit it all the time to them. And we even push them. Since they're small, we tell them, you're old enough, you don't need to sleep in our bed. You're old enough, you don't need my breast. You're old enough, you're already ready to go to the nursery. You're old enough, and so we push them, motivate them, you have to become more. And unconsciously, we transmit them, the way you are insufficient. And this, most of us know on a long term, other people like carry it all their life, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. So what does this effect on a long term, on a deep like psychological effect to our self-esteem? Am I enough? Am I good enough? So this is what we have to be aware when we approach to children continuously from this expectation. You have to learn something. Okay? Then, reward and punishment systems create dependency from external authorities. So, from our central protagonism, we are the ones which tell you you're doing right, you're doing wrong. So we create a dependency from this approval, external approval. Someone else, some higher authority needs to tell me if I'm doing right, if I'm doing wrong. Okay? So again, am I really free? Am I really autonomous? So these are really, everybody should also reflect on our own biography, how we were conditioned by these mechanisms. Okay? Okay, I don't want to go too long, we are short on time, so I'm going to try to be faster. And anticipation kills curiosity. Also, it's very characteristical of conventional, also progressive education. I bring you something, I show you something, even if you're not interested in it. So we anticipate all the time. Oh, look at the stars, look at this, look, always showing them. Of course, we do it from our heart because we want to show them and we want them to learn. But we continuously anticipate. I remember myself, I guess many of you, my mother was telling me, since I was a young boy, look at medical plants or eatable wild plants. And as a 9-year-old, as a 14-year-old, what I don't care about like medicine or plants. And when I was 20, I don't know many, I was fascinated. I'm still fascinated about medical plants or eatable wild plants. So this is also very typical, anticipating to what the children really are interested, because we want to feel that we help them, that we teach them. We want to feel usable, or we want to justify. We're teachers, we're educators. We have to show them. I'm getting money for this, so I have to do something. Okay? So this anticipation has the effect that it kills curiosity. Okay? Okay. And there are also many other details. I don't want to go into detail, like Bulimic Learning. You all know the language, the term Bulimic Learning? Okay. Bulimic Learning is what they call, when we study content, to spit it out on an exam. So if there is no connection, no emotional connection to what they studied, to what they learned, it don't remains in our brain. We just spit it out, and there it goes. And there have been experiments that they repeated the same exams a very little time, like 2 or 3 months later, and the content is not there anymore, on a very high level. So this is what they call it. We put it in with pressure, we spit it out again, but it don't stay like on disposure to like available for on a long term. So this is what they call Bulimic Learning. So what is this whole studying for? If most of us know, most of the adult people struggle even with easy academic content. And there have been many studies about that. Okay, other details like closed centers and overpopulated centers. Big schools where we put many children together. There is maybe a parallel to industrial farming, which is maybe a hard comparison, but we know that when we put animals into industrial farms, they change their behavior. So maybe there are some similarities into schools, because if we put animals into concentrated populations where they can move and act freely, they become aggressive, and so on. So I don't want to go into details, but maybe these are also very relevant aspects. the relationships, not just between the children, for example, with age separation, but also the relationship we take with the children. When we are in a conventional school, we often have to take, I worked also in a conventional school, and I didn't want to, but sometimes I had to take like the police role. So many times the relationship we establish is vertical. I'm the police and you are like a prisoner. It's, of course, it's a bit dramatically expressed, excuse me, but what kind of relationships do we cultivate there between the adults and the children, but also between the children, as I said, putting them into different classes, and what we see there is many times like a class society already. If you go to the, how do you say, when they have the break outside, the playground or the yard, often you see, hey, go away, you third class baby, this is our fourth class goal. And maybe they're just separated a few months, but they look down to them, I'm fourth class, you're just third class. So they are not solidar, they are not cooperative, they are like looking down on the weaker ones. And again, when talking about society, we don't learn to be solidar, we are learning to look down on others. Because first we're motivated, as bigger you are, as better you are, already big boy, already a big girl. And then they look down to the smaller and weaker ones and look around. So this is, yeah. Okay, so each of these points we can be talking obviously for hours, but just a very quick resume of what is going wrong in conventional schooling. Get a bit of water. The next slide. So this is the one I already anticipated. So it's about, and maybe I would like that we remember these questions. Is it about learning or is it about development? And is it about content or is it about soft skills? You all know the term soft skills? Is, yeah, quite well known nowadays. It's what they call like creativity, teamwork, problem resolution, communication skills, and so on. Okay, next slide. And before we go on, because when we talk about schooling, we often talk, and I think also here the project is focused on school children, which means 6 years on. But let's don't forget how important, how essential early childhood, even before they come into nursery. Nowadays we know the first 1-2 years are the most fundamental for our development. Here we shouldn't miss the word bonding. I hope you all know the word bonding, how important it is for psychological well-being, for mental health. This is maybe, I didn't write the word mental health, but also, is it about learning or is it about mental health? So I think in schooling we forgot how important mental health is. And in this sense also remember how important early childhood and kindergarten experience are before they reach school age, with 6 or 7 years age. Okay, so bonding and mental health in early childhood, don't forget about this. So let's go on. So now our proposal to respond to these problems is democratic education or democratic schooling. And there is not a proper definition what it is, because there are different opinions. Opinions. No. So, but there are 2 core concepts most of the people agree on. The first one is the personal self-determination. So I can decide myself what I want to do. Okay? And the second one are democratic community processes. Okay, these are like the 2 core concepts which we move in democratic education. And there are different ways to interpret this and apply this, but these are like the 2 core concepts. Next slide, please. Okay, to look a little bit into personal self-determination. So it's about human rights. We have to be aware that in conventional schooling we are not responding to what human rights should guarantee. Okay, so it's a very basic human rights question, to be able to decide myself what I want to do, and we don't respect this with children in conventional schooling or education. So this is a basic aspect of it. So here, personal self-determination is about self-directed learning, which is like one of the core concepts when it comes to learning or pedagogical aspects. And here again also to compare it with progressive education. And Peter Gray published an article not so long ago comparing, because there's a little bit of a confusion, because many people is asking for progressive education, which is softer, which is more respectful, which is not so academical studying, not so much about academical studying, so it's more respectful, but it's still, as I said before, the central protagonism is the adult. Planning, guiding, evaluating, and this is maybe the core concept when we still talk about the paradigm shift between progressive education and self-directed learning. That we give over the protagonism to the children and step back as adults. So maybe this is the core concept when talking about education aspects of democratic schools and personal self-determination. And here when we talk about learning, the difference is about intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation. We are used to work from the extrinsic motivation where we try to motivate from outside with, as I said before, with reward and punishment systems, like notes, like stickers, like well done, and so on. So I guess most of you know, I mean, it's done nowadays from a neurobiological science approach, that we notice that the learning mechanisms on a neuronal level really get activated when there's the intrinsic motivation, when there's emotional connection to what they do, when there's the curiosity, the fascination, this emotion, which is, wow, I want to know that. That is when the long-term learning mechanisms really get activated. And this is really on a biochemical level. So this, we know this nowadays. So this is also a core concept. Intrinsic motivation against extrinsic motivation. And extrinsic motivation is what we know, which causes the bulimic learning, where we don't keep the content. And it also conditions us to act out of extrinsic motivation. Okay? And again here, to be autonomous or be submissive. This is, well, I will go on. And also to be free or to, well, no, it's about personal freedom, and this is not versus, but to be aware that, and this is a hard thing for, at least for us, I guess for some other democratic schools, I would love to hear about this, to find the balance between freedom and responsibility, because freedom and responsibility, we know it's the same thing. It's the two sides of the same medal, or how you say that. So children are very quick understanding to take like the privilege of freedom, but the commitment and the responsibility it takes, it's sometimes not so easy to transmit, because we are comfortable, and to do something which is sometimes costing an effort, it's sometimes not so easy. So this is, and then we come to the community aspects, because it's not about me being free, it's about living together and being responsible for each other. So these are the democratic community processes, which is me participating actively in the democratic participations, being part of the community, having a voice, having a vote, and to be responsible, cooperative, and solidarity. It's not just about me. And this is an important thing about democratic schools. There is a critical perspective on that we raise there our children to be like egoistic, yeah, like neoliberal, now how do you say it? Sorry, my English is a little bit oxidated, but they're just egoistic beings, they're just interested in what they want to do. Okay, and I think this is the difference between the libertarian concept, which I understand is also a democratic school, but you come from a libertarian school, which is like the anarchist tradition of education, which have many similarities, but there they are more aware that we don't rise like egoistic, because this is what is happening also, what you said, that this alternative education movement is because it costs money, that it's not for free. This is so important to bring it into the public sector. It's just available for many rich people. And what we got there is very wealth people who want their children to develop well, to be, how would you say, good players in the free market and the labor market. So we have to be aware of this. That I think, I mean, we can talk critically about this if we want to have like, that individuals develop their potential just to be egomaniacs, like intelligent, creative people, or do we want to be aware that is about being solidaric, to be solidar, cooperative and responsible for the community. So have this, again, this social aspect. Okay? And yeah, here we have the individual rights and community needs. So this is the balance between me and the others, which is, not always easy. Okay, there is a whole range, as I said before, these are the core concept of democratic schools. And, but of course there is a whole range of possible interpretation of these core concepts. So I think we can say there are two extremes. It's about freedom to choose out of a program. So the concept which is known here, for example, in state schools, I know it from Germany because I was trained there. For example, a few hours a week you can choose freely what you do. English, history, maths, or whatever. So is this really free? So they are free to choose that out of a set up program. Okay? This is what happens in some state schools already. And they call it free learning or whatever. So is this really free? We can question. But there are also democratic schools. I think the most popular example is Summerhill, where the staff, where the team, the pedagogical team, already set up like a program. So the children are free to participate or not. So they come there and they see this, maybe this blackboard, and they say, now is this workshop, and this is this, and I go there. But there's already offered a program, and they can choose to go there or not to go there. But again, here it's already an offering, and the children are reacting to that. And the other, which is like the more consequent concept, is more known from the Sudbury Valley schools, where they don't offer from the beginning like a program, where it's about, we don't offer lessons unless the children ask for it. So there is not this program set up. It's more about developing, and when they say, I want to build a car, or I want to, whatever, I want to learn about what is going on in Ukraine right now. So out of the initiative of the children, we, like, what I call co-creation. Okay, so we react to the initiative of the children, and out of this initiative, maybe a program set up, and we say, okay, you want to learn French, and you also want to learn French. And you also want to learn French. Okay, when do we meet? Okay, we meet every Tuesday and every Thursday at 10 o'clock, we meet for French classes. Okay, and at the end, we create some kind of program, but it came out of a co-creation, and not already offered from the pedagogical team, just like, from their own initiative. Okay, so this is maybe the range of democratic schools. Do the kids react to a program, choose out of a program, or is it this process, this creative, organic process of co-creation? Okay? I think this is very interesting also because we, for example, choose not to offer something because on a long term we get the kids used to react. Okay, Gabriel is going to bring me something. Oh, Martina is going to show me a workshop. So I can lean back and they're going to entertain me. So we get them used to get passive and in a consumption posture. And if we don't do so and they get bored, maybe they have to ask themselves, what do I really want to do? But this is very interesting and very deep, and we can talk for hours about this. I hope we will. But now we go on. Okay, and again here, just to remember what kind of society we need. But here we have to ask ourselves, what kind of society are we offering to the children? On who really needs to learn? For us, in our school, our first pedagogical principle is that education, first of all, is about self-education of us, the adults. Because we pretend to teach them, but we have so much to develop ourselves still. We are so limited ourselves. We are so incoherent in so many things. So maybe we should, before we start asking, what do we want to teach to the children, maybe we have to ask first, what do we learn ourselves first? On a personal level, but also on a social level. And here I want to just mention concepts like eco-villages, because we know our modern lifestyle is not at all sustainable. We need to change our lifestyle, and maybe their concepts, they're already going on since many years, like in small dots around the world, for example, eco-villages, which could be models responding to the needs on a very local level where we see that a sustainable lifestyle is possible. And maybe we have to change and learn ourselves and make a learning effort ourselves and change our life and our lifestyle ourselves before we pretend to teach children. Okay? And the outlook for us on this project, so what is our mission? And we have a huge responsibility, a huge task here. It's a great opportunity. For me, I don't know if this goes along with what you had in mind, but what we see, which is the main problem of democratic schools here in Europe, is that they are not recognized by the official authorities because we don't follow a linear curriculum. And the legal situation is that you have to reach this or have to fulfill this curriculum steps. And because in the self-directed learning, the learning is not linear, like in a curriculum way, it's hard that the authorities recognize this kind of learning, because they say you have to fulfill the minimal standards and you have to show that. And this makes it difficult because it conditions the whole learning process of the children. So I think for me the main aim, the main objective for us have to be that the authorities recognize, approve self-directed learning. And democratic schools get legal and don't get persecuted anymore. Okay, this is really the presentation I added. I don't know, I'm already over time?
Yes. But you're entertaining us very nicely.
Okay, just I mean, you're gonna have this on your handouts. So to resume all this in a constructive proposal, not just about democratic education. What are pedagogical aspects of quality education, not just democratic education, maybe in a wider sense? I try to list it up, and we go quick through them, 8 points. So what I just said, the self-education of the adults themselves, maybe. First, to question ourselves, keep in a reflexive, self-critical posture. So we are as adults, we are so incoherent in so many ways. So maybe look into ourselves first before we try to teach children. But yeah, this is what we call lifelong learning, because this is maybe also the best example, the best role model, the best reference we can give to children. If they are around with adults which are still moving, which are still learning, which are still evolving, they're gonna look up and see, hey, he's still like active person who's still developing. So this is maybe the best reference we can give them. That is normal to keep on moving, to keep on learning, to be self-critical, to stay reflective. But let's go on. Also, trustful relationships. Pedagogical work is mainly to build up trustful relationships. This is before we don't really connect with the children, that they learn this is a stable person, a responsible person, which I can rely on, which I can trust on. I think this is the most important thing, to really know each other and connect to each other. Then we really see what are their needs, what do they really want to learn, what do they really want to do also. And so don't forget that it's not about teaching, it's about connecting with the children in trustful relationships. So on the trustful relationships, it's hard to do it, for example, in schools where you come in for 1 hour and you leave and you don't are together even more than 45 minutes. Here, intrinsic motivation, we already said this before, to be aware out of neuroscientific research standards that is should be focused on intrinsic motivation and not on extrinsic motivation. Next one. So again, it's about the personal development in democratic environments, not about learning in a vertical structure. It's about personal development in democratic environments. Free play, let's don't forget free play. It's so important, but because we pretend that children are sometimes little scientists and that they're so interested in our academic perspectives, but when we're honest, most of the children just want to play most of the time. So do we recognize this? Do we allow this? That this is not just has a big educational value, that this is, and this is a very important term to me, that this is an ethological need. You know ethology? Who knows ethology? Who knows ethology? What is ethology? Ethology is the science of the behavior. Okay, how do we behave? And this is amazing that many educators, many teachers don't know even what ethology is, because ethology helps us to understand ourselves, why we behave the way we behave. And ethological needs, I want to have a little example because people really like it and I'm over time, but I'm going to be quick. To be clear, what is an ethological need? My colleague, she's a doctor in biology and she worked with primates. So she told me a very clear example. If you have gorillas spend a lot of time a day, like let's say 8 hours, I don't remember the exact numbers, let's say 8 hours eating leaves. So they do this movement all day long, 8 hours, to eat and eat. Now if you put a gorilla into for example, a zoo, and then the veterinarian comes and say, okay, they need 2,000 kilocalories a day, and you can feed them with this, and they do it with food like lettuce and fruits. This food has a higher content, nutritional content, than the leaves in the nature they would eat. So this leads that the physiological need of nutrition is satisfied much earlier. But the ethological need of doing this over 8 hours is not satisfied. So this ethological need, as being not satisfied, is redirected in a problematic way. What do? They spit out the food again, so they can put it in again. So they had enough food, so the physiological need of eating is covered, but the need of doing this over 8 hours is not satisfied. So they redirect it, spit it out, so they can continue doing this. Okay, and this is just a very clear example of what is an ethological need. And playing is an ethological need of our children. And if we don't allow it to them, they're gonna redirect it. And this is gonna create problems. Well, it is creating problems, okay? So ethological needs is an important word, and play is fundamental for our development. Okay, let's go on. Contact with the real world, not keep them inside. I think you wrote this also in your introduction of the project. So most of the conventional schools are like closed centers, so we have to bring the learning from outside into them instead of going out into the world. So let's get out into the world, into the natural world, into the cultural world, because there's the learning. So this is get in contact with the real world. I try to be quick. The difference between having, well, the situational, I don't know the English right expression, and process-oriented. That means, conventionally we are used to plan the teaching, the learning, but if we go out into the world, there are a whole range, infinity of situations which come to us. So we don't need to plan, we can react to the situation, because the impulses come all the time. So this is the difference between I plan what we do, or we look what comes to us and we react on that, on a situational level. And process-orientated is to contrast with product-orientated. In many schools, or most of the schools, our work is orientated to create a product. We see this, for example, in kindergarten. We want to create the little heart for our mother, so the mother is happy. The process itself was maybe poor because I prepared it, I brought already the heart, and I help the children to cut the heart. But there's a product, and mama is going to be very happy. Oh, there's a sweet little heart. This is the product. The process is secondary and is many times very poor. If a children takes a scissor and is just cutting, she's trying out the angles and finding out really, the process is rich. The product is just waste on the floor. And mama don't got the heart, and mama is, what do they do all day long? So this is the difference between product and process orientated. And to show processes is not easy. So this is the difference between a planned work or a situational work. On process orientated or product orientated. These are like two central axes of education. Let's go on. And the last one, no segregation, especially about mixed age. To don't separate them by ages, to have them together, sharing, being together, interacting in a mixed way. Inclusive, of course, and not segregating them, especially by ages. I already said it before, like this motivation that when they look down to the younger ones. Oh, I'm already 4th class, you're only a 3rd class baby. Go off. So have them together, and so they have this empathical, social learning. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.